Hello, my friends. So, if you are new here, my name is Alison, and I'm a first-time mom to this gorgeous little girl. And if you have been here before, if you've been keeping up with me, you know I've been on a little hiatus. This is why. But as the title of this video says, this is going to be a birth story. So, I just want to, first off, start by saying that all is well. My baby girl Marley is officially a week old today that I'm filming this, and I'm so happy. I'm so grateful. I'm healing well. She is doing amazing. And this is going to be a very positive birth story, especially as a Black woman. A lot of times we only hear bad things. We hear about a lot of traumatic birth stories, and I'm so grateful that I've had a low-risk pregnancy and that I was able to birth my way and really have everything that I wanted from this experience. So to give a little bit of background, I previously was working on my master's in biomedical science, and once I found out I was pregnant, I had full plans to stay in my program and complete my program. But first trimester was rough, and my little girl brought me through the ringer. I just was mentally and physically unable to go to class, focus, study. And so I made the decision that was best for me, which was to leave my program. But it ended up working out perfectly because soon after I decided to discontinue my program, I moved to Florida, which is where my boyfriend lives. And this is where I've been getting all my prenatal care. I decided to go the birth center route, and it's truly been so amazing. So I'm gonna make another video about that a little bit later, and then I also have some really good Q&A that I'm gonna get into that I did a poll on my Instagram about. So yeah, without further ado, we can go ahead and jump into my birth story. So preparing to give birth to this beautiful baby, I was doing everything. I prepared by listening to so many podcasts, really educating myself, of course, getting all the prenatal care. I was eating dates. I was drinking the red raspberry leaf tea. I was doing the spinning babies positions. I was doing the mile circuit. I was doing yoga. I was trying to have some time with her daddy. What else? Yoga ball. Did I do anything else to prepare for labor? Oh, and just like breathing. Literally like focusing on breathing, focusing on meditating. And I still had a long labor. So do with that what you will. But yeah, so I was in labor for 3 days. So first day, I was still working. I decided to wait to take my maternity leave until either she arrived or until like my labor pains were progressed a little bit further. Now, thankfully, I do work from home, so we'll kind of see how that works out once it's time to return. I don't know what I'm gonna do. I know a lot of my coworkers have put their children in daycare, and I just don't want to. I want to keep her here with me. But so day 1 of labor, I was having Braxton Hicks. I had bloody show. And I was losing my mucus plug, but for me, it wasn't like one large glob. Like, it happened progressively up until I gave birth. And it was just like small contractions, maybe between 10 and 20 minutes, like very irregular, very mild, like 1 out of 10, 2 out of 10 on the pain scale. Like, I didn't have to really do anything to manage those. And so I was like, okay, well, maybe by Tuesday or Wednesday she'll come. Tuesday rolls around. Contractions are about every 10 minutes. At that point, there was no more Braxton Hicks. It just was actual contractions. And so how I noticed the difference between the two is that when it was a Braxton Hicks, like my stomach would just tighten up in the same areas. And at first I was like, okay, maybe she's just like pushing up against my belly. But there was no pain at all. And then when it was a contraction, I would have that same tightening, but then, of course, I would feel like how you feel when you're on your menstrual cycle. And day 2, so it did pick up a little bit. It probably was like a 3 or a 4 out of 10. Still very mild, but I decided to take off of work and just start my leave then. And which I'm so thankful I did, because it was like very distracting for me. Not that it was like the pain, but it was just like the anticipation was building. Like, okay, something's going on in my body. I'm getting ready to birth. And like, I just want to be on point, because I was like, okay, well, what's going on? But that night, I just like really was like chill. I was on my ball a lot. My boyfriend's family came over. They were like, okay, maybe today's going to be the day. We're all going to be here. And it wasn't the day. Going to sleep that night, I was like, okay, like, let me just continue to work through these. Wednesday, I woke up. I would say the pain was maybe a 4 or a 5. And then my contractions were more regular. I would say, well, still about 10 minutes, but a lot more regular. And still, I was just focusing on breathing through contractions, walking around. Me and Zay were just like walking around our block nonstop, literally with the dog. I would say the worst of it would be like when I felt like pressure. And going into Thursday, so baby girl was born on Thursday, the 26th. And going to sleep the night before, I was like, okay, things are picking up a little bit more. It's still manageable. But I ended up calling the birth center, and I was like, okay, I think something is going on. I'm still able to breathe through everything. It is a little intense, or not intense, but it's like, it's picking up. And they're like, okay, thanks for letting us know. And so essentially the way that the birth center works is that you labor at home as much as possible, and you only go to the birth center when it's like about to be game time. And so through my experience with the birth center, they prepare us a lot for like what early labor is, what active labor, transition, all of those phases of labor are, and essentially like how to cope, because at a birth center there is no medication possible. And they're like, okay, you'll know that you're in active labor when you can't really talk through your contractions. So I go to sleep that night, and then I wake up at like 3 in the morning. And for me, when I was laying down, that's when the pains were the worst. So even the days before, like if I was sitting down or if I was laying down and I got a contraction, that's when it would be the worst. And that's when they became less regular. And so I woke up at 3 in the morning, and I was just walking up and down the hall, up and down the stairs. And I did that for about an hour, and the pain was picking up. I would say maybe a 5 or a 6 out of 10 at that point. So it wasn't something that I could just keep a poker face like I was doing before. It was like I had to breathe through them. And what I would tell myself through each contraction is like, okay, give it 5 deep breaths and then it'll be over. And essentially that worked. I was timing them on the app. I think it's called Full Term. And so I was just timing them. Okay, start. Okay, stop. And so I had a pretty good idea, like, okay, these contractions are lasting about a minute and a half at most, but I can get through them. Like, I just got to take it one contraction at a time. The funny thing is, so going into Thursday, I had an appointment, which was supposed to be a postpartum appointment. And so that was scheduled at 10:45. But because of how I was feeling and noticing that things were picking up, things were getting a little bit more regular, I think at that point, contractions were fluctuating between like 4 and 6 minutes apart, especially while I was walking around. And so the midwives, they were like, okay, like, let me just like listen to you breathing through these. Let me kind of gauge what's going on. And so we decided to come in at 8 in the morning and just like see what's going on. I decided to do a cervical exam because I was like, this is like picking up, like it's about to be time. And so just listening to my body and knowing my body, especially as it had progressed, I was like, okay, it's only going to get a little bit more intense. It's going to get more intense, not a little bit more intense. It's going to get more intense. So I decided to come in and get checked. They checked me. I was only 4 centimeters. And the midwife was like, okay, I don't think you should go home, especially because I live like 50 minutes from the birth center. She's like, I don't think you should go home. I think you should go up the street, walk around the park for like an hour, maybe get something to eat, and we'll see what happens. So I did just that. And then we went to a park, and I just was like walking around for like maybe 30 minutes to an hour. As soon as we got to the car, I sat down, and then I stood up. Water broke. At first I thought I peed. I was like, I don't really know what's going on. We went back to the birth center. She checked me. Water did break. So now I was like, okay, so can I stay? Like, am I able to stay? She was like, yes. I was like, great. Let's get me set up. I want to get in that tub. I want to just like soak, have my hydrotherapy. As I'm entering active labor, I was at the birth center from about 11 a.m. till her birth, which was 6:22 p.m. And that entire time, I just was laboring in the bathroom. My boyfriend's mom and little sister were there. And the whole time, I kind of just like sat in the bathtub. Or going between the bathtub and the shower, and then sitting on the toilet, facing like the part where you put your back, I guess. Like sitting like that, breathing through contractions, just trying to get baby girl to move down a little bit more. Active labor, it was definitely more intense. I would say a 7 out of 10 to an 8 out of 10. Still manageable. I think what helped me the most is Alize being present, Alize giving me affirmations and cheering me on, him playing music, him giving me snacks and water. And eventually, I would say around 5:30, I was like, okay, it's about to be time. And my body was giving me like the signs to push. And it's funny because so the day that I gave birth to Marley, there were 2 other women. So at my birth center, there's 3 birth suites. I was in the middle one, and then there were 2 women on either side of me. And so one woman, she had actually given birth at the time that my body started telling me to push. And she was screaming, and I was like, is it really about to get real? Even though it was already real at that point. And so my body started telling me to bear down, and the midwives would come in, and they were like, okay, like, we think you might be ready, but I'm just going to call in the birth assistant, and we'll kind of figure it out. And within the next couple minutes, like, through each contraction, my body was pushing. And it was controllable, but it wasn't controllable at the same time. Like, my body was telling me to push, and so I listened. And so during those contractions, as my body told me, I was bearing down. And eventually, like, the midwives, they were like, okay, well, you're still doing fine. They were still trying to check, like, her fetal heartbeat within the water. And they're like, okay, well, we're not really hearing it. But they underestimated how far along I was, and that it was time for me to push, because my demeanor was so calm. Like, through each contraction, still just like just literally breathing through everything. And a couple minutes later, I was on my hands and knees, and I was pushing. Her head started showing. Zay got behind me, and he was like watching her come out. His mom was holding my hands. And a few minutes later, I had my sweet girl. So that is really, I'm trying to think of like how to make it juicier, but it really was just a beautiful experience. It was painful. I think the worst part for me was her head coming out. That hurt. And even so, like, in between the contractions, everything was like pretty like neutral. Like, in between contractions, I felt okay. And so again, what I kept telling myself is, I just got to get through this contraction. And once I got through it, like, I was fine. I was able to like joke. In their notes that they have online for me, they're like, yeah, she's smiling, she's joking, she's cheerful. I was able to catch her myself. I did not take videos. I was not really comfortable with having it recorded, not even for myself. I just didn't want to see it. I still don't want to see it. Like, I'm curious because I'm nasty like that, but I didn't want it recorded just for my own personal preference. But she was born, she was healthy. all of her newborn exams went well. And so now I have my beautiful baby girl, Marley Nichole. She was born 5 pounds, 9 ounces, 18 inches long. And she is just so perfect, so beautiful, so wonderful, such a good baby. So yeah, that is my birth story. Like I said, I am going to do a Q&A, and I'm going to talk about what the birth center experience is like. So stay tuned for those. Those will be coming very, very soon. I probably will record it right now since she's asleep and I can take advantage. So thank you all for listening. If you have more questions, definitely go ahead and drop those down below. Maybe I'll do a Q&A part 2 if there are any questions, or I can just answer them within the comments. So thank you all again for tuning in. Thank you all for your congratulations and your well wishes. And yeah, I'm so excited to showcase my daughter. All right, y'all. Bye.